first, the gospel for today seems fairly straightforward. In fact, we might hear it and relax. After all, we're not people who would tear down old barns to build newer, bigger barns, right? The gospel begins in the middle of a story which happens in a crowd of thousands. If we read from the beginning of the chapter, Jesus has been teaching and preaching mostly about hypocrisy and how the disciples can defend themselves when brought up before the authorities. And then out of nowhere, this guy stands up and asks Jesus to tell his relative what to do, to divide up the inheritance. In essence, trying to put Jesus on the side of those authorities. It's Jesus' response that might surprise us. He says, basically, I'm not sent to judge. And I've met many a Christian who think it's precisely for that very reason that Jesus was sent to us. To be the judge and the jury, and then to be the one who gets us out of our bad behavior. It's worth some time to think about why Jesus says he doesn't judge. Are we wrong about why Jesus is here? If he's not here to judge, then why? If we read the Bible in one light, we might say that Jesus is here to teach us. And yet it's not always a very straightforward teaching, is it? We've talked about parables before, about how they're strange. This one seems straightforward, with a message that's not so different from other parables about wealth that Jesus has taught us. But if we dig deeper, we find the message is a bit more nuanced. Let's look at the parable again. It's not really about our excess belongings. If it was, I could just finish by playing the George Carlin routine about stuff and all the ways we need to find more and more places to put more and more stuff. It would be funny, and we could marvel at the fact that it's still as relevant today as it was in the 1980s when it was part of Carlin's stand-up routine. And a side note, if you do go home this afternoon and you decide to look this up, consider yourselves warned about the language. It's a bit R-rated. It's George Carlin after all. So I don't want you to say, wow, that preacher lady sent me to an R-rated. Wow, he knows how to cuss. Doesn't he? The rich man's error is not that he accumulated stuff. It's that he put his faith in his possessions. Instead of relying on God, he relied on himself. Look at his speech. Look again at that speech. Look at all those pronouns. I. I will do this. I will do this. Me. Mine. Think about all that the rich man left out of his speech of rejoicing. There's no acknowledgement of the laborers who have surely played a part in this bountiful harvest. Most of us have had a garden, or we know people who have had a garden, or we've eaten zucchini out of people's gardens who have more of a garden than we do. And maybe I'm just a bad gardener, but I have never grown enough with my solitary efforts to need even one barn, much less to build additional barns or tear down the old barns to build big ones. So surely the rich man had a team who was doing the planting, the weeding, the watching of the crops, the killing of the pests, the harvesting, but you wouldn't know it to hear him talk. You'd think this rich man was the one who himself was the soil and the seed, the plants that grew. There's no thanksgiving for the land, for the good weather, for the ways that the planting season had gone well, in ways that humans had nothing to do with, in ways the rich man had nothing to do with. There's no mention of God who has blessed him. The rich man is not saving his bounty for a day when crops fail. It's not like the story of Joseph and the Egyptian Pharaoh near the end of the book of Genesis. Joseph advises the Pharaoh to save the bounty of the land for a time of famine, which will surely come. But our rich man in Luke wants to build bigger barns, not for a time of famine, but just so he has a place to store the bounty until he has a chance to consume it all by himself. He has more than enough to share, but he doesn't. The rich man has no consciousness of any life beyond his own. He's not sharing his bounty with the laborers, right? He doesn't say, hey, good work, laborers, have a bonus, right? Have a raise, even. Have you noticed how bosses like to give you a bonus? They don't like to give you a raise, because if they give you a raise, they have to keep on giving you money. But he doesn't even give these poor folks a bonus. He's not sharing it with the poor who are probably hungry. It's all about him. And therein lies the problem. His wealth is what separates him from everyone else, everything else, the ones who work for him, the land that performs for him, God who blesses him, the larger community. The rich man thinks he can do it all and can continue doing it all. This parable asks several questions which are worthwhile even if we're not so wealthy that we need to figure out how to build bigger barns. What do we want and why? We're only here on this earth for a short time. What's it all for? I predict that most of us would not say, I'm here on earth to build bigger barns, to store all my wealth in bigger barns. That's what I hope we would say. What do our actions say? Our lives speak volumes. The way we're living our lives, what does that say is most important to us? The Gospel of Luke is full of these kinds of parables, full of rich men who are stupid with money. Parable after parable, teaching after teaching, they ask us to consider, what are we doing with our wealth? In the Gospel of Luke, it's okay to be rich. It is, but you better also be generous. And that's not all. The parable asks us to consider our relationship with God. In this parable, his wealth has separated him from everyone else, including God. Look at that last verse. So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God. Not rich in God, not rich with God, but toward God, which to me speaks of relationship. It's not a simple share your wealth kind of parable, although that is a valid takeaway, right? Why are we storing all of this up? We could die at any moment. But it's more than that. It's also a parable that asks us to do some serious discernment about the kind of wealth that's valuable. Are we spending time building up barns to store our wealth, or are we generating a different kind of wealth? A wealth that won't require barns. The parable harkens back to the Mary and Martha story of a few weeks ago. Jesus asked Martha to discern what distracts her from what is truly important. The wealth of the rich man here distracts him from what is truly important. It's a shame that this gospel text ends where it does. The parable is even richer if we add the next several verses of Luke 12. So I'm going to read them. He said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to the span of your life?" Notice all those themes are there. The barns, the worrying, the fact that your lives are going to be over at a certain point, Jesus tells us. It's a message he returns to again and again. Like Martha, like the rich man, we are distracted by many things. We scurry around building bigger barns, and we run the risk that time will wear out and run out. We store up treasures that aren't making us rich toward God. We pay attention to so much that is not really important in the long run, or even in the short run. And it's not a question that is settled once and for all. It's the result of 1,000 daily choices. The rich man's foolishness builds up day after day, month after month, year after year. He pays attention to what's not important, and then, before he has a chance to pay attention to what is important, he's dead. Let's return to the encounter that triggers this parable. The stranger's demand that Jesus order his relative to share the inheritance. Now, in light of that parable, Jesus' response makes more sense. Like the rich man, the stranger has become obsessed with the kind of wealth that does not matter. Like Martha, he's gotten snared in worries that do not serve him in the long run. Jesus doesn't come to judge us, but to ask us to do some serious discernment. Are we too ensnared in worries that do not serve us? Are we so obsessed with legalistic details that we're missing the larger picture? Again and again, Jesus promises us that our lives will be richer if we pay attention to what's important. And again, Jesus reminds us that it's not worldly wealth that is important. The good news is it's not too late. Jesus calls us to make the choices that will make us rich in God, not rich in grain. And should we get off course, Jesus is here not to judge, but to call us back to our best selves. To offer us a life centered not in consumer goods, but in God. And that life will be rich indeed. Amen.